Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is Producer Coop, and it is very, very close to After Dark. I am here with another episode of Producer Coop After Dark from the Own the Moment Network. And with me, I have a very special guest who's going to break down the NBA news, who's going to give us some insights into who he is believing in the current landscape of the NBA. We're going to do some recaps as to what has happened within the NBA and within NBA Top Shot over the course of the last 2 weeks. It has been a wild 2 weeks, both from an NBA perspective and from a Top Shot perspective. But without further ado, let me do a very warm welcome and quick introduction of John Bachman. Bach, I am still continuing to learn a little bit about who you are and what you do. But as far as I know, you are one, very, very active in the NBA DFS streets. Two, someone who continues to study the NBA, to look through the players of the NBA, and who has obviously been in the Discord from an Own the Moment perspective, dropping tons and tons of NBA analysis. One, welcome to the show, and two, really pumped about continuing to get to know you and what you're bringing from an NBA perspective to us at Own the Moment. So, welcome to the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here. Happy to do it. And I think obviously it's an awesome time for Top Shot. It's also just a fun time in the NBA season coming out of the All-Star break. Playoff races heating up, trade deadline next week, which obviously we're all watching closely. So pretty cool time to be able to talk to you.
Yeah, man, it's pretty awesome. As someone who was a super casual fan, and that might actually be overstating it, of the NBA, and who's really gotten into Top Shot, I myself have just been kind of catching up on all things NBA. And so it's been super fun to kind of bring that perspective to start to watch more NBA, to start to understand the game a little bit more. So it's been fun to be sort of the NBA noob of the crew, if you will, and really get a ton of insights from yourself and from some of the others that are in our Discord. It's been super fun. But yeah, you said it best. I think there's been a ton happening. So let's kind of quickly recap the last 2 weeks. It is Sunday night, March 14th. We're a week outside or since the NBA All-Star Game, right?
Right.
A week since the NBA All-Star Game. Yeah, sometimes you lose track of time within Top Shot. So a week after the All-Star Game, and man, what an All-Star Game it was! Pretty interesting concept with the way they had the 3-point contest, the dunk contest, and the All-Star Game all over the course of the same 4-hour span. I thought that was super interesting and cool. I guess let's just open it up with what were your thoughts on All-Star Game weekend, and how specifically Top Shot played a role in the All-Star Game.
Yeah, I mean, I think the night itself, everything being together was really cool. It was a really cool opportunity to just get to see everything. And obviously, I'm sure the NBA loses some primetime viewers on Friday night, Saturday, Sunday night. But for me as a fan, just getting to cram it all in was awesome. And the 3-point competition was pretty stacked. I was thrilled to see my boy Mike Conley make it there. Him and I started at OSU the same year. My freshman year, we went to the Final Four. So I've always been a big Conley fan. Was thrilled to see him make the All-Star game, albeit as an injury replacement. Was thrilled to see him go to the finals against Steph. I mean, Steph had to hit that last one to win it. Which obviously he did because he's Steph. But
for a second, I thought he wasn't going to. For a while, I was like, "Oh, Steph's going to run away with it." Looked great, and had some side action with some friends just for fun because they wanted to go against Steph. And then I was like, "Wow, Conley might actually pull this off." But of course, he was silky smooth with that last shot.
Yeah, I had bet on Steph, so I was happy to see that. But my heartstrings were still pulling for Conley. And then obviously the dunk contest, we've all talked about it ad nauseum, but Anthony Simons really shouldn't have advanced. Cassius Stanley's first dunk was just ridiculous. I don't know what the judges were thinking. And then, Simon's last dunk was almost really cool, right? Where he tried to kiss the rim and didn't, but they gave him credit for it anyway. So.
Yeah, I wanted to get into the dunk contest, so let's just state for the record, you believe Cassius Stanley's first dunk should have been a 10, it sounds like?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty sick. As someone who certainly cannot dunk myself, when he first did that, I was like, wow, if we are starting off with that dunk and how easy he
Right.
made that look, I was like, geez, this is gonna be pretty interesting. So I had again some side action with some friends who were incredibly upset to see that dunk was not as highly rated as they thought it was going to be. But let's also talk. Obi Toppin's first dunk was pretty sick as well. I thought that looked, from my perspective, again, casual outsider, it looked like it was one of the harder dunks to pull off, and he just made it look so easy. I guess, what was your thought on kind of top two dunks of the night, if you will?
Yeah, I think it's Stanley's and Toppin's first two. I think if Simons had gotten the rim on that last one, like, it's just such a cool concept.
For sure.
I do think that Simon's first dunk probably doesn't get enough credit for being as hard as it was, right? To like go up and get that ball from where he got it and dunk it. Like, I think aesthetically it wasn't as pleasing as the skill to make it happen. And so, one thing I will say, obviously the judges are all guys who can dunk, like you. I myself cannot. And the judges are all guys who can. So maybe they appreciated the like how hard it was a little more than the casual observer. But yeah, I think we kind of started off. We started off better than we ended with the dunk contest, which like you, I was sitting there thinking, if this is how it starts, where does it go from here? And
yeah, absolutely. I mean, the last
disappointing.
round had a lot of hype to live up to after that first round, and I think we almost got there. Is kind of how we felt, right?
Yeah.
I think Obi's dunk would have been pretty cool as well if he pulled it off that first time. I think when he failed that first time, it was kind of like, oh man, it's tough. But yeah, I agree. Someone being able to jump 12 feet in the air, get the ball off the placement there and flush it was certainly, like you said, maybe not as aesthetically pleasing, but certainly a high level of athletic capabilities to execute on that one for sure. And yeah, so I guess the game, I thought it was pretty interesting. Lots of shit talk at the end of the day from the likes of Giannis and Steph. I think we heard that when the teams first came out, those guys were thinking like, you'll never beat us. And then the other crew, I think a lot of people thought that they might hang in there, but man, it was a little bit of a runaway. I think. What was your thoughts?
Yeah, just the shellacking. And as you're looking at the draft, like order playing out in real time, for those of us who are looking at it, you're sitting there thinking like Team LeBron is just stacked. And I wasn't confident Team KD was going to hang in there. They've got some gunners though, right? And obviously like James Harden can cook. Zion really did nothing, but you would expect his brand of like bully ball to be great in the dunk contest, or not, excuse me, in the All-Star game. And then, they were just kind of, I think, a little bit underwhelming, to be honest. And, when Steph's catching fire like that, when Dame's catching fire like that, when Giannis is perfect from the field, 18 of 18 or 16 of 16, whatever it was, like, it's going to be tough to beat those guys when they're doing things like that. I wasn't that surprised that, I had the Team LeBron side of the 4.5 point line. I was a little bit surprised it was
sharp.
one-sided. Yeah, well, lucky maybe, but
yeah, I think two highlights from my perspective. One, if Zion in the first quarter sort of figured out a way to kind of slam that one alley-oop that he got or something like that, like, and he just like started heating up, I completely agree. Like, he might have just run amok and with the bully ball style. It looked like he was a little nervous after that kind of completely failed. So I don't think he got the momentum potentially. But then I mean, Steph and Dame hitting from some ungodly ranges was just absurd. I mean, every shot that Steph seemingly took was just like completely nothing but net. It was just very, very easy from his perspective. So it was fun to watch. And yeah, as a guy who was watching again with, maybe not the most astute basketball watcher, I was laughing when everyone was saying Giannis was 10 for 10. I like, what was he, like 8 of 8 dunks and two banked in threes or something like that?
Yeah,
I was cracking up. It was like 100%. Yeah, he's dunking the ball all over the place. Right. So I was laughing at that. But yeah, I think it was a pretty fun day. It was a fun event to watch, and I think the NBA is continuing to figure out ways to get viewers to watch. To your point, maybe gave up some real estate from a TV perspective on Friday night and Saturday, or Friday night, but then went all in on trying to get as many eyes as they could over the course of that 4-hour period, which I thought was super unique. So pretty fun weekend. Also, I don't want to miss the fact that it was a huge weekend on Top Shot, right? We had Seeing Stars 3 pack drops. We had Rising Stars on Sunday, the rare pack drop. I think there was tons and tons of eyes on Top Shot, tons of mentions. And so in general, I think a very, very successful All-Star game from both the NBA perspective and from the Top Shot perspective. Any kind of high level thoughts on the Top Shot weekend to go inside and to coexist with the NBA weekend?
Yeah, I mean, I was disappointed that we all ran so cold on the live stream. None of us getting Rising Stars packs. Like
8 guys going over was tough.
It was tough. It was, especially because it would have been so fun to rip one on the live stream. But
for sure.
No, I mean, I think the NBA Instagram account went live on Sunday before the All-Star game, talking Top Shot, right? And they've got 45 million followers or something absurd. Maybe that number's wrong, but they got a ton of followers.
It's something crazy. I know it was high millions for sure.
Yeah, and so just a ton of eyes. I will be really interested to see how that materializes into new user signups. Unfortunately, I don't think been up for new user signups since that time, or if so, it's been super throttled. So I'm excited to see the fruits of that investment of eyes for the Rising Stars, and then the NBA Live Instagram account. And I think there have been a couple of other big things in the last week as well. Like, I just want signups to get open so we can get more new users and get more people having as much fun as we are.
Yeah, I completely agree. Again, as someone who, with limited NBA exposure, right, I found it pretty difficult to explain a lot of the stuff about Top Shot to my friends, maybe or just maybe people that it comes up in the conversation with. But man, the All-Star Weekend and the way Top Shot sort of coexisted with All-Star Weekend, I thought it was so easy to fit in a natural conversation. So I've actually had a variety of conversations about it, why I was more interested in it, why to me, Top Shot played a cool role. The idea of the Rising Stars game was super interesting as well, with that being so Top Shot focused. And so I just think the whole thing sort of went off pretty well. And from my perspective, completely agree on the signups. I think they've been open here and there, but not kind of full blast, to your point. Definitely throttled a bit. So we'll see what happens over the course of the next month. I think that will be really indicative of if we got some traction there, and to see what sort of happened. I do want to also hit on, it's been a wild marketplace. We continue. And one of the things that really attracted me to Top Shot was the idea of the free market, right? Someone could post their moment for, $1 million, or I guess the top is 250K, right? But someone could post their moment for pretty much, an endless amount of dollars, or, you could sort of navigate the floor, and we've got undercutting going on. Right. And I think, with Top Shot trying to balance the buyers and the sellers, trying to make sure that the experience is, at least somewhat considered in the ecosystem, knowing that they've, 10x their user base over the course of, 30 days. We've got a bit of a wild marketplace. I think it started off on Sunday night as being a restricted marketplace where you could only buy and sell a moment every 90 minutes. I think there was obviously some quick reactions to that, both on our side and just broadly within the Top Shot world. But I think we saw them throttle that back pretty quickly, right? I think if that was out there, for a couple of weeks or something like that, we'd probably have a different opinion. But all for the site trying to optimize the user experience, right? So nobody wants to spend 6 hours trying to buy a moment that has been bought by 1,000 other people, and is wasting some time. Any thoughts from your perspective on just marketplace in general?
Yeah, it definitely has changed my dynamic in the marketplace, right? Where it's just constantly scanning new listings. You're not doing that anymore because you can't buy anything for 60 minutes. And I found myself in, at times, some weird scenarios where it's do I want to waste my one buy on this thing? And 30 minutes goes by and I'm like, well, I should have just bought something 30 minutes ago. So I'm glad that's going away. I mean, I think ultimately my macro thought on it is, the marketplace being stable when they open up, new user signups is the most important thing, right? And we're past, I think, the point for hardcore Top Shot people to get in the game, and that, or at least at scale, right? The next wave is not going to be hardcore Top Shot people, and so we need the infrastructure to be able to handle those people, because they're going to get turned off super quickly by a terrible user experience, where we are still going to be here trying to buy that, cheap card that cheap moment that popped up. So I think investing in the infrastructure, doing what they need to before signups open up is important. And from a strategy perspective, I know Justin and TJ talked about it a bunch, largely looking at kind of what they did. So if you haven't listened to that pod, I think you missed out.
Yeah, you can go listen to it. It's out there. I think they gave some good thoughts on, reactions of that marketplace and the restrictions we had in place, how to potentially think about that, offered some perspective and thoughts and some strategy as well. So go check that out. So yeah, and I think we've covered, I wanted to make sure that we hit on like all of the things that were happening. I think we covered a good bit of it. I will say, us at On the Moment, I think all of us are really bullish on Top Shot. And then, we had the good fortune of bringing on Jeremy Levine, and the conversation between Justin, TJ, and Jeremy was great. And I thought offered a ton of perspective from someone who's really a big investor in the market versus someone who's sort of playing the market, if you will. Yeah. But man, I thought we were bullish on Top Shot, and then we saw the mega bull, Mr. Levine, offering tons of insights on comparisons to the physical card market, why he's super bullish, comparisons, not even just to Top Shot or the physical card market, but generally to when we move from a physical world to a digital world and what that looks like. So I thought the conversation was great. Check that out if you haven't. So yeah, tons of things happening. Kind of last bit of recap news I wanted to make sure we hit on. We're in the Wall Street Journal. CNBC is doing interviews as well. Mr. MBL on CNBC and Andy mentioned in the Wall Street Journal. The mainstream outlets are certainly paying attention and starting to cover Top Shot specifically, but also more broadly NFTs, right? We had CryptoPunks. The CryptoPunks are exploding at the current moment. We have Beeple with a $69 million sale. I mean, it's just all popping off. And I think we're still in early stages. So it's a fun time to be in the space. It's a fun time to be just kind of digging through the rabbit hole that is NFTs. And so, jump aboard, be with us. We're trying to keep up and swim as much as possible. But it's been fun. So it's been a heck of a last month and a half. But okay, Bach, enough sort of recap, enough sort of intros. Let's bring to the people the reason why you're on the show, the reason why you're grinding the streets. Let's talk about the OTM player rankings and ultimately what specifically that is and how that came about, how that idea came about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I don't think it's gone out as of recording this, but it will be going out soon to the Discord. And so, I'm sure we'll have something about it. But ultimately, we spend so much time thinking about the strategy behind Top Shot and which moments to buy, which moments are valued, whatever. And I think Coop, you're a great example of someone who wasn't really an NBA fan, right? Got into this early. Like, we're trying to bring a way to objectively evaluate players, and everyone knows LeBron's the greatest of all time or the second greatest of all time. But there's a lot of guys on.
We'll get John's answer on that before the end of the show for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely not. But there's a lot of. I think Top Shot is a super unique space because how do you evaluate a guy who's about to retire and has had a pretty good career versus a rookie versus like seasoned grinder vet, right? And how do you evaluate them from a basketball perspective? And so we're trying to kind of put together a framework to bring that perspective, obviously database like everything we do in the moment is, but trying to bring a database evaluation of how do you compare guys across a spectrum of careers and upside so that when you're looking to buy a moment, you have an understanding of like how good is the player actually at basketball and how good is, how much upside does the player have? And it's a complicated process because, how do you compare Al Horford to a Nikola Vucevic, right? Like, one guy's at the end of his career. He's been good for a really long time, maybe never great. One guy's still kind of coming up, has been probably better than, Vucevic has been better than Horford was, or, as good as Horford was. He's got some upside, but certainly if his career ended tomorrow, we wouldn't put him in the same vein. And so we're trying to put together a framework to help people evaluate those players.
Love that. Love that. I think you said it very astutely, right? Like, how do we compare players? Because I thought at first when I joined Top Shot, I mean, maybe I was the biggest donkey of them all, but I was looking at all the moments, like what looks cool. I don't know who every single one of these players was, but as I was starting to like comb through the chaos that is the marketplace, I'm looking at like what looks cool, what's interesting. Obviously, I had an idea who some of the biggest names were, but I think evaluating a player and then seeing that, while the individual moment certainly matters, I think the conversation around kind of having a player in your portfolio and then watching them compete on a night in, night out basis and watching them hit the box score with, a 30-point night or a career high or whatever it might be, and seeing how that impacts what the market is thinking is fantastic. I think that just brings such a new layer to this. And so the idea of looking at these 200 or so players and saying, all right, here's our, objective database opinion on where things sit is such a good way to think about it. So how did it start? Like, where did you start with, hey, okay, these guys got moments. How do I start to pit these guys against each other?
Yeah. So, we had this idea and we just put together a list. Let me get all the players who have moments. The list right now is 280. I've got to make sure that we've got all the new first time additions from the most recent pre-order pack drop in there. But as of right now, the list is 280, and we just went through and kind of grabbed the data for all these guys from a career perspective, and then just started evaluating them. So primarily we're looking at like win shares for the career, win shares per 48 minutes for your career, and then some data on kind of this season as an indicator of how folks are trending up, down. And then just a less data-based, a more somewhat arbitrary, but upside evaluator, right? And those are the two dimensions. Basically, we're evaluating where's their career at now and what is their upside. And I'm sure that folks are going to have different opinions, but I would love to get in the Discord and debate those with you. And I'm sure my mind will change on some guys too. You talk about guys having 30-point nights, like Kevin Porter Jr., someone we already bumped up after 2 days of starting. And, we said when they called him back during the AllStar break, like, he is going to get run in the second half. He is a guy that, has a great draft pedigree, hasn't done anything in the NBA to date. But if he gets minutes on a bad Houston team, he's going to put up numbers. And 2 nights in a row, he put up great numbers. And I know he's about to tip off again tonight. I'm sure he's going to put up some great numbers again tonight because he's going to get run and he's pretty good at basketball.
And again, this was a guy who literally was not in the league, right? Like, wasn't in, got demoted, wasn't in the league, completely changed his role. And now here we are.
Yeah. And so part of what we want to do, so we put together an initial perspective on these rankings, an initial ranking. We're going to be updating them every week over the weekend. And part of what we're going to be evaluating is, who should change. I think on a week-to-week basis, most guys aren't going to change a lot, right? Al Horford's pretty locked into Al Horford's career. But if he goes to, for example, a championship contender, if he were to go to the Lakers, if he were to go to Boston, if he were to go to Philly, which would be ironic, but if he were to go to Philly and go win a championship, right, then I think we might evaluate his career a little bit differently than we do now. And so that's kind of the framework that we're using to evaluate these guys. And not surprisingly, rookies and second year kind of high draft picks are the ones where we're making the most projections, just like I think we all are. I would encourage you not to go look at the rankings and say, I'm going to buy this player because they're ranked number 48 on that rankings, right? But as you're doing the rest of your analysis, as you're looking through and saying, here is a strategy I want to execute against, this is a great supplement to say, if I've got 2 guys I'm comparing, are they generally in the same tier? Or is one guy way better or way worse than the other? Just one guy have way more upside than the other as another evaluation criteria that we can bring to the table.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, right? I think we're seeing moments minted at the 35,000 mint number at this point in time. We have, I think it's over $1 billion, cap from a market cap perspective. There is tons and tons and tons of money trading on Top Shot. And I think when you look at the marketplace, if you're a relatively new user, I'm not exactly even sure kind of what you're potentially looking at, other than what the marketplace is showing you is refreshing and selling at the current pace, right? Or searching for one or two players that you like. And so I think continuing to try to push ourselves at OTM to say, if I'm a new player, how do I take a look objectively at this market and start to make some strategic decisions about where I'm spending some money? And I think that really plays into, my process, because, as someone who has a limited set of dollars, and I, very intimately know what's happening from an OTM perspective, and I'm still overwhelmed. There's times where I'm on the site and I'll be on the site for like an hour and I'll be saying, I don't even know what I just did on the site. I'm not sure what I clicked on or what was my objective. And so I really think kind of bringing yourself out, looking at, broadly how the NBA is functioning, how players are functioning, to your point, what tier are these players at, is super, super sharp at a way to just narrow your focus. I think there's so many quote unquote shiny new toys right now. And Top Shot is doing great at coming up with these ideas to create shiny toys. But I think you really, as someone who eventually runs out of capital, right? Even the whales don't have, endless capital. At some point in time, capital runs out, and you have to figure out where you're putting some dollars. So a great way to look at the players that we have moments out there for. What was the toughest thing, Bach, in coming up with this? What do you think was the most challenging piece, and maybe something you spent the most time on?
Yeah, I think, just tinkering with, so the two things that I've probably tinkered with the most, and I think we'll continue to just, get feedback from folks and tinker with. One, how do you evaluate like vet careers versus up and comers, right? Like you take a Tony Parker, you take a Manu Ginobili, right? Guys who are going to be Hall of Famers, probably top 100 players of all time. And you take a Zion, right? Who #1 overall pick, has been a stud in the league, but hasn't won anything. Like, how do you evaluate those guys on the same type of a framework? And just tinkering with that. And, a big part of that is how we evaluate a player's upside. And I know we've had a lot of discussions just among our kind of OTM team on, how do you evaluate upside versus, for an individual player. And I think that's something that, those are the types of things that are going to change more frequently as we're updating these rankings every week. And as we see more, right? If DeAndre Hunter goes out and strings together 4 30-point games in a row whenever he gets back from injury, we might say, hey, DeAndre Hunter's ceiling's a little bit higher than we thought it was. Kevin Porter Jr., a great example of that. So I think those are probably the two things that have been the toughest. And, we're going to continue to iterate. And like I said, would love to discuss it with folks and just get other perspectives, because I love to nerd out talking about this.
Yeah, completely agree. I'm going to kind of show a little bit of what we're cooking up kind of behind the scenes that Bach has really been spending tons and tons of his time on. I think it's going to create some discussion, right? Which is ultimately our goal, is to create a viewpoint that will drive some discussion. So let's do a quick game, right? Let's talk through a little bit of kind of cool or unique pieces of this that stuck out to me right away. A couple things that I thought were super interesting to think through. And I got a couple of guys highlighted here. So KD, let's hit right on KD, right? So one of the things I've been looking at, Durant, knowing he's got tons and tons of upside, still has tons and tons of time in his career to build his quote unquote legacy. And then his position between Kawhi, Steph, KD, talk a little bit about those three and like what you see around KD and what your thoughts are around KD.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually think that we've got a new version of this, even since the one that you've got pulled up, where we bumped KD up a little bit higher. I think he's a great example to start talking about, as is Kawhi, right? Like, KD is probably at this point one of the top 30 players of all time. And So, we've got him evaluated, in this career evaluation column you see, up at the top. He does have a little bit of upside, right? If he goes and wins 3 more championships, we might put him in the top 15, 10 players of all time, maybe even higher than that. And I think that's where, like, he'll never be as good as LeBron, right? Could he approach Tim Duncan? Maybe. I think it's unlikely. Could he approach Dirk? Maybe. I think it's unlikely, but more possible. But he's clearly going to be one of the best, and is one of the best guys with moments minted on Top Shot. And so I think that's kind of how we're trying to evaluate. I think we've got him right now bumped up just a little bit above Kawhi and Steph, but right in that same tier. Because when we think about KD's career upside, he's got a lot of years he could win titles, but I don't know how much that's going to move our evaluation of him to a materially different level. Right now, if he goes and wins the next 3 titles, maybe we do start valuing him on the same type of spectrum as we value a maybe not LeBron, and I guess he is the next tier. But from a Top Shot moment perspective, his price isn't as reflective, and maybe that increases if his legacy really gets to that level.
Yeah, completely agree, right? Like, I think at the end of the day, when you start moving up into these, new tiers, it becomes super difficult to move into the tier of the greatest of all time, right? You got to win 3-4 titles in a row. You got to have multiple NBA Finals MVPs for KD to really kind of change where his current outlook appears to be pretty cemented into a new realm or a new stratosphere that is the LeBron James, Michael Jordan conversation at the end of the day. So it makes a ton of sense to me, and one that I think is going to foster a lot of discussion, which I think is fantastic. So another name that stuck out to me, I have highlighted here, is Ray Allen, and again I'll tease a little bit. We had Jeremy on, and I believe he mentions, and I'm going off of memory here, so if it comes out that this is incorrect, I'll have to eat crow. But I believe he mentions that someone like Ray Allen, from a physical card market, doesn't really garner as much as much attention, if you will. Even though he's a Hall of Famer, he's someone who's one of the better players that's ever played the game, especially from a shooting perspective. So I thought he was interestingly placed here, and I think just someone that we're having to slot between guys like Jokic, Harden, who are continuing to play, are continuing to build on what they've already kind of started from a foundation perspective.
Yeah. And I think this is a great, Ray Allen's a great example of, his Top Shot moment is probably not ever going to be, one, I think he only has the Run It Back series, right?
Yep.
So he's got one moment, $4.99 mint, super scarce, and that's it. So the price point is high. He's probably never going to be valued like a Harden, like a Jokic. Maybe he's similar to a CP, although CP has some cosmic and hollows, right? But if you were sitting there saying, hey, I want to evaluate Run It Back because I think there's value in the Run It Back set as a whole, looking at this list and saying, okay, from a Run It Back perspective, he's, probably in that second tier. You've got the Duncan, Dirk, KG tier, and then you've got the Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, Steve Nash tier. And he's probably in that second tier of players. Is he priced like that? And if he's not priced like that, do I think that's a market inefficiency, or do I think that there's a reason he's not priced like that I want to go chase? I think there's value there.
Love it. Just tons and tons of analysis. And I think this showcases a lot of the thought process, right, that went into this, that it's pretty tough to do. It's a challenging thing to think through all of the situations that Top Shot brings out. So I'll cover one last piece, and I think pretty fun one, the young guns, right? If I scroll down the list a little bit, someone that stuck out to me was Trey Young. And again, someone who's sort of more the casual fan. A lot of my good friends that are more into the NBA, they've said, man, Trey Young, he might be struggling a bit, or he might not be kind of living up to his current potential, and he has tons of room to go. Plus, he's super marketable, right? I think we've slotted him obviously in and amongst the Zions, the Jazz, the LaMelos. I think he was the one that just stuck out to me as someone that creates some interesting discussion around his current play and what his potential upside is. So any thoughts on Trey Young there?
Yeah, and I think we've actually bumped him down just like one, as you can see, this is all in increments of 5, bumped him down to a 40. Look, Trey Young is putting up unbelievable numbers this year, right? From a scoring and assist perspective. That team is still only okay. And I think there's a question of, what is Trey Young's ceiling? Can Trey Young be a guy who goes and leads you to a bunch of championships, right? Like you look at Damian Lillard, who is, in a tier of player, I think ahead of Trey Young, but a similar type of player, just an absolute machine scoring the ball. And Damian hasn't had any huge long-term success from a team perspective. Now, again, they're one guy. The NBA's played with 5 on the floor at a time, 15 on a roster. But I think that, Trey's one that I think you would look at and say, until you start to see some team success, you're evaluating him on an upside potential as opposed to kind of an achievement potential.
Yeah, I think super interesting. And like I said, it's been fun to just watch this, to see these guys. And if you ask me who some of these players were, 6 months ago, I would be baffled and have no idea who that is. So it's been fun for me. So two sort of questions to close out OTM NBA player rankings. I think we'll go with the fun one first. Give me, player X who is relatively high ranked that you think I have no idea who he is.
Oh man. Well, I would have probably said Karl Anthony Towns, but the Cool Cat challenge and his Cool Cat probably made you aware of him. Did you know who he was before the Cool Cat moment?
I had known who he was,
Okay.
just because of some subsets of being in and around Minneapolis, and so Minnesota, just kind of hearing about some things that are going on in the Minnesota sports market. So I would have known that, but not really a ton about who he is or what his level of play potentially is.
Yeah. Okay, so that would have been my first guess. Maybe my second guess would be Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Yeah, no idea. My friends were referencing SGA in a group chat, and I had to ask, like, who are we talking about that you guys think is undervalued? So it was pretty good to pretty good call out there for sure.
Good. Yeah,
cool.
I think he's got a lot of upside. We got to see Oklahoma City get better, but I mean that roster that he's playing with right now is just woof.
Yeah, I think the team element of all this is super interesting as well, right? So if you're in the conversation more and you're pushing into playoff positions and you're winning playoff series as a team, I think obviously you're getting more of the limelight, and so that brings an interesting dynamic to all this as well. Cool. So my last question is this: obviously from a top 3 perspective, you need to have some LeBron, you need to have some KD, you need to have some Steph. Give me the fourth. And that's really just my must-haves, which could be someone different from somebody else's must-haves, right? But give me number 4 outside of KD, Steph, and LeBron that are sort of must-haves as part of your long-term Top Shot portfolio.
Yeah, I'll say 2 guys. One of them I have a pretty sizable investment in, Nikola Jokic. I just think that, especially with the Embiid injury this week, which we didn't talk about as we were covering news because there's so much going on, but he's out for at least 2 weeks, maybe more. I was watching that game live and was just absolutely floored that it was only 2 weeks. I mean, it looked bad right off the bat, but I think that probably moves Jokic, firmly into MVP frontrunner. He'd already played like 25% more minutes than Embiid this season, and that's only going to grow. And just, he's a young guy. He plays a really exciting brand of basketball that I think people are going to enjoy as a big guy who's got handles, who's got unbelievable court vision. And then the second, I think the more obvious answer is Giannis, right? He's got 2 MVPs. He's still 27, 28. I forget. I'll check real quick, but he's still young. He's got 2 MVPs. He's got the athletic profile, 26. He's got the athletic profile to just be, really good in this league for a really, really long time. And, he's also got the kind of foreign player element, which I think will have an effect as Top Shot starts to grow outside of the core group of investors and more casual fans and more collectors say, I want Giannis.
Love it. Yeah, I think two great guys to think through from a long-term portfolio perspective. That makes a ton of sense. That makes a ton of sense to me. I guess what's kind of to ask a follow-up around Giannis, right? I think, main question or thought from me is, I keep hearing, well, some of the bigger guys aren't going to garner as much attention. I guess even Jokic, right? From a bigger guy's perspective. What's your thought there on bigger guys continuing to potentially capture more and more value from a long-term investor's perspective?
Yeah, I'm curious to continue to learn more about this because I know it's a perspective that we all have, and looking at the data, it seems to bear out. I don't know how corollary that is to the physical card market as well. I think if it's a corollary in the physical card market, it might continue to be a thing that we need to take into consideration. I think Giannis is maybe a little bit different because while he's a super tall dude, he's more of a point forward like LeBron than he is a big guy, but certainly could see that impacting Jokic, Embiid, and some of the lesser tier, centers, true centers, or true kind of back to the basket power forwards like Sabonis that we see in the league.
Excellent. So yeah, I think anything else, Bach, that you wanted to make sure that we covered from an OTM player rankings perspective. I'm super pumped about this rolling out. I know we've put a ton of work into kind of getting this, collating the information, evaluating it, really kind of testing it amongst the several of us internally, and just getting this to the people. So anything else you wanted to make sure we covered?
Yeah, I think, we talked about we'll be updating it every weekend. Like I said, primary movers are going to be people whose either situation changes materially or their opportunity changes materially. So super excited to keep, following NBA trade news. I know there's a number of things right now where like Harrison Barnes to the Celtics is looking like a distinct possibility. And we could see, him going from a small market team where, he's having a good year to a big market team that kind of makes them a contender, a real contender. And so, we'll be evaluating the player rankings every week, both with box score performances in mind, but I don't imagine those are going to move the needle a ton on a week-to-week basis. Opportunities, and then as we get into playoffs, team success, right? If CP gets that ring, he re-enters a different conversation around, where he sits on an all-time list. So excited about that. And like I said, hit me up in the Discord. We'll chat about it. Bach is the name, and I'd love to just nerd out on NBA stuff.
Bach is the name, NBA is the game. In fact, he is dropping tons and tons of knowledge in the Discord. Yeah, the Discord channels that we've got kind of dedicated to NBA have a pretty hardcore following. And I know there's been a lot of people firing questions back and forth at you. Love the discussion. I think the player rankings is going to create some buzz within the Discord and certainly bring about some conversations, which should be fun to watch. Yeah, I wanted to do just really quickly. I know we're kind of approaching the 45-minute mark, trying to keep this show pretty concise. We are unveiling a baby today, so appropriate. Ooh. that we are going a little overboard with Bach's baby around these rankings. So Bach, I guess I wanted to hit on portfolio really quick. I'll talk a little bit about kind of where I've been over the course of the last couple of weeks. I've actually been relatively on the sidelines. I've been trying to, knowing sort of where I was in the first month, the investments that I made, I think kind of understanding that there's, a finite amount of capital to be spent, and figuring out where to spend it has really been something I'm studying on and continuing to kind of figure out. So I've been a little bit on the sidelines. I've been trying to evaluate things like long-term versus medium-term versus short-term. I think overall, just kind of starting to feel out the market a bit. I mentioned that just because I think there's still some value in Series 1s, even in Series 2 base commons. I think there's some value there versus attacking some of the challenges, where I think there's certainly value in the challenges as well. So yeah, I think from my perspective, just knowing that I'm someone that's pretty comfortable with where my portfolio stands longer term, just trying to figure out where where I should play next, and trying to really kind of overcome the FOMO and the greed mentality, right? I think it's been a struggle. It's something fun to balance, but continue to keep yourself in check, right? I think this is a long road. I think there's a lot of opportunities that are going to be out there, and I think my message, today is don't try to FOMO into everything, right? If you miss an opportunity or something like that, there's sort of always another one right around the corner, from my perspective thus far, at least. And so, I've been a little bit on the sidelines, kind of dabbling a little here and there. Haven't really been kind of too active. So trying to evaluate what my next play might be. What about you from a marketplace activities perspective?
Yeah, I think I'm probably in a similar spot, right? I've got, the amount of capital I've got invested is probably approaching, what I'm comfortable with investing or able to invest right now, until I win one of these NBA DFS tournaments, and then, a new influx of cash. But until then, I think, one of the things I'm trying to do is free up some capital to just have there to attack opportunities, so that every time I've got a bunch of stuff I feel good about and want to hold, and then I see opportunities, and every time I want to attack one of those opportunities, I have to buy in more, and I'm trying to prevent doing that. And so I feel like I'm missing opportunities. I think the thing I've been really focused on over the last week is evaluating my portfolio and saying, a little bit from a player perspective, of like, I've got some moments of guys that, I got them because I thought they were good values at the time, but I don't necessarily believe in those guys in the long term. And I'd rather either free up that capital now or consolidate that capital into guys I believe in the long term. So mostly trying to figure out how to time that and do that in a way that's not just like feeling like a fire sale for the market. So I think that's a lot of it. I know Justin and TJ talked on the strategy pod about challenges and just trying to figure out how to attack those appropriately as well. Those are kind of my two big focuses. But yeah, I feel you. The excitement of the first, month of this, where it was just, constant action between the marketplace restrictions and between the fact that like I've built my portfolio up, like you said, to a place where I'm pretty comfortable, has me feeling like taking a more strategic and slower paced, approach to Top Shot over the last week.
Yeah, it certainly has not stopped my refreshing and my evaluating and my being and spending time on Chop Shot. That's for sure. But yeah, super articulately said there. I think I've been kind of balancing capital and trying to determine. And I think that's been a spot that I've been in, right? Where it's like, man, I see what I think to be an opportunity, but damn, I don't want to sell the moments that I currently have, or, I'm trying to figure out which ones I'm comfortable moving, if I'm comfortable moving anything. So yeah, it's been a little bit of tug and pull from that perspective. So super interesting and unique. All right. Well, I think that really does it for this week's show. Anything else, Bach, you wanted to cover from your perspective?
No, I'm excited to get these rankings out to the people and see what people think.
Yeah, it should be fun from the perspective of what is to come. Wanted to make sure we did let the people know we will be doing an Ask Me Anything in the Discord tomorrow night, on Monday night. Justin, TJ, Bach, myself, and several others. Neil will be in the Discord answering some questions in and out throughout a specific time period. We're gonna have more information to come on what that time period will be, but it should be fun. I think the OTM player rankings is going to be a highlight of some of those questions that we're getting, I'm sure. So keep an eye on our Twitter, at the moment NFT. If you aren't following us on Twitter, give us a follow. We're going to be kind of bringing you the news about where we'll be and what we'll be doing on a week by week basis via Twitter. So make sure you're checking us out there. Other thing I wanted to make sure we hit on is gifting. Based on the recent office hours, gifting is coming back. I know there's a few moments that we have to gift out that we had on some of the other shows. So we still have that on our radar. You will be kind of receiving those from us as soon as we have the capability to do so. So stay tuned. Stay tuned on that. Otherwise, that will do it for another episode of Producer Coop After Dark. Bach, thanks for joining the show. Really appreciate the insights. I am looking forward, like I said, to being in the Discord and reading the back and forth between you and the OTM community. It should be pretty fun. Any final words for the people?
No. Yeah, hit me up. I'm excited to talk about it.
Awesome. That will do it for Producer Coop, for Bach. Another episode of Producer Coop After Dark in the books. Have a great evening.